Go ahead.
Then good afternoon, everyone, and good morning to those who are joining us from another side of the world. My name is Julia. I'm strategic advisor with UAtech, and we are very happy to welcome you all at our webinar today. So some of you might have heard from about UAtech from our pitch competition events around the world. Maybe someone has attended our events or even pitched on a stage. But as you know, we work with a lot of startups. And as we face many startups, we know how challenging and complex topics like EU AI Act can be for small, medium businesses and especially for the startups. That's why we wanted to tackle this topic today and address it heads on. So before we get started, just quick housekeeping rules. The session will be recorded, so we will share the recording with you later on. And we have a couple of great speakers joining us today, so they will present different points of view, different insights. Feel free to post your questions in the Q&A box at any time, and we'll get to them at the end of the session. So let's get rolling. Artificial intelligence. So what started with a simple text generation not so long ago has now evolved and now expanded into personal, professional, and even geopolitical domains. And its impact is not longer abstract. Decisions are made, policies are created, and real lives and real businesses are affected. So that's why governments, including the European Union, are working to regulate AI across not only technical, but also legal, ethical, and even political dimensions. Because not everything that is technically feasible can and should be allowed. EU AI Act was published back in 2024, but since then, many startups, many businesses still have a question. Is EU AI Act here to kill my business or to make it stronger? Is this something that's applicable to me? Is this something that I need to worry about right now? Or how do I even get EU AI Act ready? Well, today I'm joined by three experts who will hopefully help us make sense out of all of this. So let's get to meet them. Let's do a quick round of introductions, and maybe Julia, let's start with you.
All right. Thank you. Hello, everyone. Great to see you all. I'm Julie Gabriel, CEO and co-founder of AREACT, AI Act compliance automation platform. I have a legal background. For the last many years. I've been working mostly in tech, and this is, I guess, my whole career was preparing me for exactly for this, to help founders like myself tackle the intricacies of European AI Act without huge expense, without huge effort, basically dealing with it on the background as you innovate, as you build, as you deploy, and helping you do it accurately, on time, and yeah, as the law requires, in a continuous way.
Thank you, Julia. We also have Anna and Tia. Who would like to go first?
Theo, may I? I do not see him, so I don't know. And being a lady, going lady first, so I will introduce myself and thank you for inviting me. I'm Anna Dymowska, COO at Funding Box, and I have masters in economics, and since 2004, I already started working as a consultant for European grants and European public aid, serving thousands of SMEs and startups across Europe in getting the public funding for their initiatives and ideas. But last years, I'm also involved in the VC fund that Funding Box launched several years ago, and I am partner there at the Funding Box Deep Tech Fund. Being a partner there is also giving me a good insights of the investor's perspective for the for this world, and especially due diligence that I was mostly involved in. So that's me. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna. Very much looking forward to hear the investor perspective on this topic as well. And last but not least, Theo, great to have you here today.
Thank you very much. And hi, everybody. My name is Theo. I am a Tech UK's EU policy manager. So for those of you that might not be familiar, Tech UK is a trade association representing at this point, I think we're at a bit over 1,200 member companies, all based or having a presence in the UK, and companies from across the digital and tech ecosystem. And therefore, I'm the EU policy manager, so I'm based in Brussels, and my work is to engage, help companies usually understand the EU legislative policy landscape, but also promote those company interests with the relevant EU stakeholders.
Fantastic. Thank you for joining us today. Well, guys, we got to know a little bit our speakers. Now let's get to know our audience before we move forward. So let me run a quick poll and let's see, what do you guys know about the EU AI Act in general, and how familiar is your organization? So feel free to choose one of the options on the screen. So you might be very familiar, might be somewhat familiar, you heard about it, you've never heard about it. There are people who have never heard about it. I already see some answers. So let's see, a couple more people have a chance to respond. Okay, we have more than 80% of responses. So the last attendees, let's get a couple more votes and let me end the poll. And interesting. Let me share the results so all of you can see it. So it looks like most of our audience has heard about it, but doesn't know the details. So Julia, Tia, Anna will appreciate any insights you can share from your side. There are some people who've never heard about it, so welcome to the webinar. You're in the right place. And yes, there are some people who are a little bit more down the road, so we might get some very specific and tough questions. So looks great. Let's get rolling. So to set the scene, maybe I'll address my first question, Julia, to you. A UAI Act has been here for a while. So why does it feel so urgent right now? What has changed, and why are we even talking about it today?
I think the pace of technology, the speed at how things are developing, evolving, and we can see by ourselves how different AI is today from text generators we have seen maybe 5 years ago, and how much it can do. Sometimes we are being unaware of the extent of AI penetration in our lives. So I guess it's like in those Terminator movies, it's time for humans to try and take charge and try to make AI behave as much as we can. I know, of course, humans who make it think, talk, and do lots of amazing stuff we are now taking for granted. It's just the pace of the progress and the way, the speed of how things are developing. I think they're forcing countries, continents to take action.
So can you tell us a little bit more why you think this legal framework is so important for startups?
Well, startups, many founders that we talk to, they take AI Act as something they can deal with later. And just one thing, there is no later anymore. Yes, this is a binding legal framework. If you're building AI and have one European customer, it applies to you. So it doesn't matter if you're a two-person startup in Kiev or a scale-up in London, the law still doesn't care about your runway or your roadmap. If you're building and selling AI in Europe, you must comply. So the more startups are building, the more at different stages they must think seriously about it. And well, thinking about there's a lot of positive things. First of all, AI Act is risk-based. So if you know your risk level, if you understand your risk, you can focus on what actually matters for your product. And that's what we're going to talk about it today. But let's talk about the numbers, because I'm happy to see the numbers I have seen in the poll, but I have another set of numbers to discuss with you guys. So can I have the first slide, please?
Yes. Yes, are you seeing the slide? I think we should be looking at the numbers that you prepared.
Yeah, about
Perfect.
articles or we can just go on, since it's pretty straightforward. AI Act is very verbose. It has 180 articles in this whole regulation. On top of it, there are 113 recitals, which is in lawyer speak for more stuff to read and keep you in your mind. And most importantly, we should keep one number in our heads. It's August 26th enforcement deadline. And that's another number 7 months away from today. So that could mean some pressure and even panic. But most importantly, regulators, and we already discussed this, already started asking for your compliance assessments. And because you need more than 15 core compliance documents, that's another number. And if you think you can just take your files, your PDFs, your Notion, throw it away, throw it together in July, and that's bad news because for companies that we work with and we talk with at our stage, it takes up to from 6 to 12 months to build proper compliance documentation. And that's with expensive help. So if you're sitting there thinking, I'll start in the summer, I know it's going to be quiet, and anyway, I'm too little, I'm too early stage to worry about AI Act, that's is a wrong attitude because the law doesn't care about how big you are. If you're big enough to build AI product, you're big enough to care about AI Act. You have to comply. And that would be great to see our next slide, which is there are a number of really big names already on board with the European AI Act. That's Google, Microsoft, OpenAI. They already committed billions to AI Act compliance, not millions, just billions, really. Google has AI compliance, AI governance team specifically for Europe. Microsoft builds entire Azure AI compliance framework, and OpenAI established European presence specifically for this. But most importantly, what it tells us is not that this is not the law for the big guys. This is just a sign for us, for all of us, that regulation is real. The enforcement is serious, and the fines are huge. So, and most importantly, for all of you guys, the law doesn't distinguish between mom and pop startup somewhere in away from the big capitals and the five and Google. Because if you build an AI and sell an AI, you have to comply with the same rules as Google. And the same regulator will knock on your door or send you the same email. And but for startups, it's much easier to comply because we are more agile. We can adapt to the rules much more quickly, and we can build compliance into our systems from day one. We don't have legacy systems to retrofit. We don't have 47 different products to document. We can move faster than the big guys, and that's the advantage, but only if you start early, and which is now.
Yulia, maybe let me ask you this, because I think when we talk about compliance, probably for many people, the first association is GDPR, as it's been in the air for the past couple of years. So when we speak about EU AI Act and compliance, is this something similar to GDPR, or is it something fundamentally different that can affect businesses?
That's a question of chicken and the egg. What was better? What was first? Not what was better. But generally, GDPR is a legal problem. GDPR says, here's what you cannot do with the data. AI Act is more of a product development problem. AI is telling, okay, here's what you can and cannot do with AI, and show me the evidence at every stage of your development. So yeah, for GDPR, you can take a lawyer and you become GDPR compliant in a few weeks. And with AI Act, that is integrated into your quality management, risk assessment, technical documentation, market monitoring. It's basically rebuilding how you build your product. And the good news, because there are good news, compliance can become your competitive advantage because enterprise clients, investors, they love startups who can prove their AI won't mess up someone's production or won't die in the middle of the round.
Well, that's good news, but I think there are also some slightly intimidating news that the costs for non-compliance are pretty high.
Well, that's one cost that everyone is talking about. It's 35 million euros. That's the maximum fine for prohibited AI practices, and that means you really have to mess things up really a lot. But there is a bunch of different other layers of responsibility, and that's 15 million or 3% of your global annual turnover, whichever is bigger, for high-risk violation. And many startups are building in high-risk category. And also, which is very tricky, 7.5 million or 1.5%, whichever is bigger, for not providing information about your problems when asked. And the deadline for providing that information is very, very narrow, 15 days. So if you're doing it in the traditional manual way, using consultants, using spreadsheets, means that, yeah, you won't probably make it on time. And if you're thinking, okay, 35 million is a huge amount of money, that's basically everything that we have raised so far. We don't have the money, we don't pay. Well, if you violate the law, you are done. That's the end of the story. There's reputational damage, there is market ban, there's product rework, or pivot is the least of your worries. And that's also very expensive. But yeah, fines are scary, but the real cost is basically messing up everything you have done so far.
Wow, a lot to think about. Thank you for this rundown, Julia. Maybe let's check with our audience. Based on what you have heard, what are you most concerned about when it comes to UAI Act? All right, very interesting change in answers. And by the way, I saw that quite some people joined a little bit late, so we have even more attendees today. And 60% of the answers to the poll came in. So what are you guys most worried about? Somebody is not worried at all. Happy people among us. Cost, resources, understanding, or technical implementation. All right. Well, I think we have the majority of the answers already in. Last 5 seconds to give your answer. Let me end this poll and share the results. So what is your biggest concern about UAI Act as it comes to compliance? So most of the people looks like they simply don't understand whether the rules apply to us. It's probably what the rules are about. Cost and resources to comply. Yes, indeed, what it takes, technical implementation. And the happy 2% say that they are not concerned because it doesn't apply to us. Very interesting answers. And maybe let me stop sharing the screen now. And my next question I will address to you, Theo. The numbers Julia shared have been truly intimidating, I must say, at least to me. And given the audience that we have, it looks like some people are just somewhat familiar, some are concerned about the compliance, some are thinking that it doesn't apply to them. So maybe you, as the EU policy advisor, can you please ground us in the policy and enlighten us? So what is UAI Act about, and what are the core things the startups, the founders need to know as we are talking about this topic, and what are the main things they need to focus before taking any further steps?
Yeah, hi. So, I mean, I hope I can indeed ground you all in relevant policy perspectives. And obviously, it's going to be a bit difficult to give, I think, advice. It'll be because it'll vary from case by case. But I think Yulia had very much kind of nicely introed things. Indeed, I mean, you have to understand that this is first, maybe because indeed not everybody seems to be very familiar always with the Use AI Act. I'd say understand that I think the scope is larger than what you might expect. There's a lot more of a chance that you might indeed have to comply in one way or another than not. So maybe that'd be the first thing. The second is indeed obviously there's this whole system of once you understand whether or not you apply, kind of understanding where you apply. There's this system of high risks, low risks, unacceptable risks. See where you fit within that thing. I mean, for a lot of companies, obviously, a lot of the tools that they might have used, like spam filters, things like that, things you use every day, you won't have to do anything else, right? It's fine. If you're already compliant with your normal legal requirements, then you probably won't have to do more. But obviously, seeing whether or not you fall under these higher category of risks, that's where you're going to have a whole lot more compliance. So I guess indeed figuring out where you fit there is going to be key to determining your compliance requirements. And then maybe I'd add another element because I know some people in the poll said that they are a bit more familiar with it. I'd also flag all of this is happening, but there's also currently some major political developments in the background happening right now. Also, already trying to reassess what compliance should look like and what timelines should be. So that's another major thing that I mean we can dig a little into this further later on. But I think these are major things to indeed kind of pinpoint for now. Yeah.
Indeed, and thank you, Tia. And I think that the biggest question, and I also saw some questions in the chat, people are just, I think, stuck at the very first question, asking, is it applicable to me? What if I'm using AI as part of my product? What if I'm using AI as a tool? Is the EU AI Act applicable to me or not? So maybe if we can just reiterate this and advise them on where they can get started.
Yeah, so I mean, again, I'd rather be more cautious in the advice usually that I give when I have. So I'm more used to dealing with a lot of British companies usually, and outside of the EU as well. And I'd rather be cautious in the advice that I give, which is understand that there's a good chance that you're probably going to have to comply in some way. The moment you are indeed kind of creating any form of AI-enabled tool or using an AI-enabled system to create decisions, there's a good chance you're going to be covered. I think what really matters and what I really want to make sure that people understand is it doesn't matter if you're a company that's incorporated outside of the EU, if you're running everything on servers outside of the EU or not. What matters is the output. If the output of your AI system or your AI tool that you've created ends up in the EU and ends up leading to influencing decisions happening in the EU, you're going to be covered. The people who drafted the EU AI Act legislation and have learned lessons from GDPR and things like that. When you look at GDPR, there's still some ways in which you can find kind of loopholes to run things outside of the EU to do certain things. I'm not going to get into that broader discussion because that's also a big rabbit hole. But EU AI Act, people who drafted that legislation tried to make sure to close those loopholes as much as they could. So again, I'd rather be cautious and tell you there's a good chance you're going to have to probably comply in one way or another. And if you're a bit more legally minded, I'd say first and foremost to guide you in this, look at Article 2 of the EU's AI Act. That kind of gives you what's in scope. And that basically highlights if your output lands in the EU, you're going to be in scope. If a customer in the EU uses your system, it doesn't matter if you've sold your AI system to an EU-based deployer, even if you're not directly active, if a customer ends up using that system, there's a chance that you might have indeed kind of compliance requirements as well. If you are big enough to have subsidiaries acting in the EU, say you're a company based in, I don't know, say South Korea, you're using your AI tools to inform your hiring processes. And those AI tools end up kind of leading to decision making that impacts people being recruited, say in Germany. Even if none of that use happened in the EU, you're probably going to need to comply still in some way. So again, understand that maybe my cautious call right now is to say, understand there's a good chance you might fall into that. And then I think also quite crucially, you might be thinking, well, I've just kind of used someone else's AI system and I've modified it for my own purposes. So maybe it's the other person's role to comply. I'm just using someone else's tool. Depending on how much you've modified that system, you might also need to comply with certain requirements. Your status might be different. So I'd say maybe these are the major things that I want to highlight is be cautious because indeed the scope is wider than you might expect, even compared to legislation you might have dealt with in the past.
Thank you so much, Tia. And jumping ahead, I just saw another question in the chat that I think it's relevant to what we're discussing right now. So do you have any thoughts on any other auxiliary legislation that is related to EU AI Act that our attendees should be paying attention to?
So, I mean, auxiliary legislation. So other pieces
So
of
we
legislation.
actually have an example here of the EU Product Liability Directive.
Yeah.
I don't know, Juliana, if you have any input. If not, we can come back to this later on, but just wanted to check.
Yeah, I mean, Ultimately, yeah, that it's a good question. I mean, there's the EU still trying to, I think, currently figure out kind of the interoperability of those
Mhm.
requirements in this horizontal legislation and how it will work with all the other pieces of legislation. So it's currently really right now conducting that work of trying to simplify things a bit to make sure that you don't have to look at a billion pieces of legislation to understand how this might impact you, because obviously AI legislation ends up kind of being intertwined with how you deal with data legislation, indeed how you deal with product liability as well. So it's a great thing to point out. Indeed, yeah, EU product liability directive, because that kind of fits into that. But ultimately, I'd argue uh, maybe to make things simpler for now is I think really just focus heavily on your core immediate compliance requirements, because as Julie mentioned, deadline is coming up soon. And I think
Mhm.
focusing on making sure that you get that right first is going to be key.
Mhm.
But yeah, I'm going to be rambling on if I keep going, so maybe I'll stop there.
No, no, no. And as Julia mentioned before, there are 180 articles in the EU AI Act alone. So good luck with going through that. Thanks, Theo. Maybe just to wrap up, a couple of questions for you as well. Are there any common mistakes or common trends that you are seeing startups and businesses going through as they are trying to get compliant with the EU AI Act?
Yeah. So I would say ultimately, because obviously the legislation isn't properly enforced yet
Mm-hmm.
fully. So to give you examples of things that have failed and that have gone wrong is difficult for now. But what I can tell you is I think the biggest mistake is when companies don't quite realize that they should be working on their compliance now already. I think
Mm-hmm.
first of all, some might not understand that they fall in scope, and they might think, well, just wait and see. That's not a phenomenal approach, because you'll probably realize a little too late, and then you don't want to be faced with penalties by the time
Mm-hmm.
that happens. Um, I'd argue that I think maybe the best way to also exemplify my point is um, a lot of companies also thought, you know, what we'll do is we might fall under these high risk requirements that allow us to or that require us to comply in slightly more complex ways. And the EU had announced that it would release guidelines on determining what's high risk more
Mm-hmm.
specifically, because it can also be a complex process of determining if your AI tool system is considered to be high risk. And so a lot of people might have thought, okay, I'll just wait for the EU guidelines to really determine what my compliance requirements might need to be. And those compliance requirements and those guidelines, sorry, were meant to be released next week. But the EU has kind of already gone ahead and said, actually, those things won't be ready on time.
Mm-hmm.
And the issue in all of that is you might have to wait longer to get that clarity, but the deadlines are still there.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd argue, because I mentioned that kind of political development as well before, saying, well, the EU is kind of also already reassessing how it might deal with compliance and things like that. I'd say don't base your compliance based on hypothetical developments. Base it
Mm-hmm.
on what the deadline is now, because even if based on what's currently being announced, even if some compliance requirements are pushed back to 2027, there's some major things when it comes to reporting that will not be pushed back to 2027. So whatever happens, you're going to have to do certain things already when it comes to assessment and documentation. Even if you don't have to submit it to a whole bunch of different things already, you're going to have to do that work already by that August 2026 deadline. So I think I'd say that. And I saw, I think kind of fits into a bit of a question I saw in the chat. Someone said, are there tools already that you commission or things like that I've put forward? I'd say yes. I think already to make things clearer for you to see where you fall, give you kind of a starting point of where you need to head towards. The EU has released an AI Act help desk, for example. So I've not used it myself, so I wouldn't be able to tell you whether or not that's a tremendously useful tool or not. But I think it's a great starting point, because you can kind of go through. You can ask it. There's a chat system where you can ask a few key questions to briefly give you a key idea. And there's also, I think, a little portal through which you can ask people in the EU institutions some questions, which I think might help you guide you in that compliance. But I'll stop there for now, I think.
No, thank you so much, Theo. And of course, the question, we all understand the importance of it, but the question is, what do we do? So just jumping ahead, guys, we have prepared some very practical tips and next steps for you that we'll share at the end of the webinar on how you get started. But before we get to that, let's maybe change the lens a little bit. And I would like to ask Anna to join our conversation. So Anna, as we are here, from what we are hearing, EU AI Act and EU regulation, it's not only changing or impacting how the entrepreneur should be building their product, but it's also might be impacting how they will get funded in the future. So you coming from a funding box, working with different startups, being a startup mentor, but also having experience in helping startups access the public funding. Could you please share your point of view? What has changed so far with the EU AI Act and what funders are expecting to see now from the startups?
Sure. Thank you very much. And hello to everyone. It's nice to see that many people involved in this webinar. Happy to be here with you. Of course, as in startups world, everyone is waiting. So if you ask me what startups are doing now, they are observing, waiting, and trying to understand, which is also coming from the questions, right? Trying to understand if it will apply to them, what does it mean to me, and what need I comply with for, and at the end of the day, how much it will cost me, right? So it's like, this is where I think startups are today. And I do not wonder why, because many European laws were very delayed in execution. So it is the sensation, of course, that here it will be also a delay, or it will not apply that quickly, or the fines will not be that. The penalties will not be that heavy for us as startups, right? Because also it cannot. So I think what was already said, it will most likely be applicable to many, not all, of course, but to many. I think, and maybe here I will ask Theo also to like emphasize it again. I think the question was also, if we use AI tool, do we have to comply? I think the answer is that the AI tool provider have to comply, and you need to make sure that your provider complies. Basically, it's the vice versa, right, Theo?
Yeah, indeed, it's good to clarify. Indeed, I mean, if you're just randomly using an AI tool that someone else has fully developed and you're using it based on the way at which it was meant to be used, then yeah, as long as your provider of that AI tool complies, which again, you have to hope as well that they're aware of those requirements.
Yeah, this is
Things
exactly
change
what.
is if you start modifying a tool that someone else has created for you as well. That's where
Sure.
things get more complex. But indeed, good clarification.
Of course, but this is where I would like to have clarification, because for us investors, and the all investors, and also for the young grants, will be important. If you are checking your provider, basically you should not buy an AI that is not compliant with the EU AI Act. So this is already a dangerous situation for all of us, like including us investors and as funding ones, because we will need to make deeper due diligence of our providers and double check our providers if they already comply with AI Act. And as you saw on Julie's presentation, many big techs already are working on that and will be compliant, and this will be good. However, this is not that obvious that it will be for free. So what we learned already about GDPR, or having servers in Europe and all the security policies, they often are compliant with that, but you need to pay for it, and the payment is then much higher than without this compliant thing. So this will of course impact all of us, and will impact one way or another all startups. Based on my experience with EU grants, this will make a change, especially for all the grants that could involve an development, deployment, or the use of Act in their in the project application. So European Commission is already asking this in the grant awareness procedures, if you foresee this to happen. And then the most dangerous problem with applying to EU grants, and also I think with investors, that many times you are self-assessing something. And the danger of self-assessment is that if you do not understand this all 180 rules or clauses, how you can assess yourself in light of you are asked questions that maybe you do not fully understand because you do not have the full scope of the party that is asking the questions. We are seeing it many times, for example, with the GDPR questions or with the questions about SME status. It's something that you are often guessing and not really answering. You need to fulfill another mark and you need to put another mark. So you are guessing, you are okay. And I think it will be, and it is very important for later audits, later checks, to not pay back this money with penalties, to be fully aware and what applies to you, what not, and how you could comply or breach the act. The issue is that normally the self-assessments and the self-statements within the European grants are just asking for a statement that you are stating, for example, and now I will be reading because this is a real example of real statements that normally the companies need to state. It's like compliance with European Artificial Intelligence Act and alignment with EU guidelines and best practices of on ethical AI. So in this one sentence, and this is like just one easy click, you are signing kind of contract with the Commission that you are compliant. And even if no one will be checking it during the awareness procedures, the audits and the checks, and the Commission have many checks and many institutions that can then make audits on you, could then verify it. On the investor side, from the other, but to answer all the questions that Julia passed on me, it's like from the investor side, the due diligence will also change. We already know it is like for sure for the due diligence, we will need to include not only the questions but also the checks that will let investors minimize the risk, as was already said, the risk of investing in the company that is not compliant, and then risking not only money but also the mark, right? The face and the trademark of the investor. So this all will impact us, but I do not want to just tell you that, okay, because of the statements, because of the paperwork you need to. I think we need to be all also aware of the dangers of the AI, and I think we should also be all just how to call it, adults in this world, and humans, and stay humans here, and not use it and not allow others use it and against ourselves. So I think it's very important act, to be honest, and I am very happy to see that it's that much done already to implement it, and implement it in the due time, so without major delays.
Indeed, Anna, thank you so much. And indeed, AI, it brings us great power, but with great power comes great responsibility. And thank you for sharing your perspective. And I was just wondering, maybe before we move to the next topic, could you share with us a little bit more on the following. So I know that funding box helps facilitate access to the EU funding and public funding, but what about private investors? And we have a lot of early stage startups here, so I'm sure they're looking for investors at some point. So could you share your point of view how EU AI Act might impact of what private investors are looking for?
Thank you, Julia. I think I can only guess, of course, because we were also quasi public investor with the public money behind. A lot of investors in Europe are also backed by public money from different sources. So it will be considered them as public investors or quasi-public investors. Of course, private investors could have a bit higher risk acceptance. Public investors cannot, just they cannot afford to have high risk acceptance due to all the obligations of public money being involved, right? So it's our money, like society money. So we are not spending ourselves money, but we are spending the money of the taxpayers. So therefore, the risk acceptance is always lower with the public investors. And with the private investors, I bet that some of them could invest blindly. Meaning blindly is like, I like the idea, I like the tool, and I am investing my money, and I am investing in many, so maybe some of them will bring me bigger money. So in this kind of blind investments, yes, it will not matter that much, most likely, because investors already are accepting other risks, IPRs, GDPRs, the different compliance issues, and they are accepting it. And for some of them, not. Institutional investors, bigger money involved, I think this is a no-brainer. It will count a lot to all of them, you know. So the bigger the money will be, private or public, the more important and the more thorough due diligence will be.
So there is no escape.
I don't think it's an escape. Yeah.
All right, great. Thank you, Anna. And I see more and more questions asking about, so how do we get compliant? What do we do next? So actually, guys, we have prepared some very practical tips and an action plan for you to follow. But before we get to that, let me check with the audience. What do you guys think you should do first? What will be your next step after the webinar? So let's find out what our audience is thinking to do afterwards. Okay, so are you planning to assess our AI system risk classification, start building compliance documentation, explore compliance tools, hire a compliance officer? I think this comes from GDPR times when everyone or a lot of companies were looking for GDPR officers. Wait and see what happens. That's always optimistic. All right, maybe let's just give a couple more seconds, but we already have most of the people respond. So, okay, wait and see. Hire compliance officer, start building. Maybe I'm not sure what to do. So, let me end the poll now and share the results with you. Ta-da! So what is your next step? Assess your AI system risk classification. So looks like indeed we come to the conclusion that there is no escape. Probably try to find a tool that will help you in the assessment. Start building compliance documentation. Like Anna mentioned, it's important to have a proof and wait and see. It's still 11% of the participants are waiting. Well, let's move to the next section. And Yulia, I know you have prepared for us a very practical action plan, which I hope will be helpful for many. So before we jump into that quick housekeeping thing, I see that some people have been raising their hands. Dear participants, we don't have a possibility to hear your voice, so please submit your question in the Q&A box and we'll get to it at the end of the session. And now I will share some of the slides that Yulia have prepared. If you do not see them, please, or if you see them in some weird shape or form, please give me a shout out in the chat so we'll make sure that you have the full visibility into them. How do things look right now? Can everyone see the slides?
I can.
Oh,
Thank you.
okay. Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Julia, so what is our course of action? Where do we begin?
First of all, guys, thank you so much for actually choosing the right thing. 41% voting for assessing your risk, and that's exactly your first step. What you should do to determine your entire course of action, because as I said, the whole law is risk-based, and it depends where you belong, and so that you don't overpay attention, you don't underpay attention, you are just being just right and probably a bit pessimistic. So, three critical steps. Let's get a quick overlook. First, yes, classify your AI, understand which risk category you belong to. Second step, build evidence. It's not meaning like you have to hire a detective running around with, collecting fingerprints. Basically, we collect those fingerprints. You can do that yourself, but you have to have comprehensive, complete compliance documentation to prove that you've been doing things right from the start, or at least started doing them midway. And third, yes, you have to maintain compliance because the law requires continuous compliance. It should not be one snapshot at a time, like with other regulations, when you get a shiny new certificate and off you go for the rest of the year doing whatever you want. It's an ongoing monitoring, updates, and ongoing audit readiness. So that's the thing. Actually, most startups are doing it in the wrong order. They jump straight to documentation without understanding the risks, or classifies them as I have seen it as well today, as low risk because they want to be low risk, not because they actually are. And the key to success is start now, be realistic, be probably pessimistic, build systematically, and automate where possible because doing this manually is going to kill your velocity, first of all. So let's move to the first step. And that's, yes, classify your AI. Four risk categories, each one of them, if you get this wrong, it means that you are posing yourself for a violation. Unacceptable risk, these are banned completely. Social scoring, subliminal manipulation, some biometric system, depending on the use. If you're building this, stop right now. High risk, that's where most of us, and no, not including most of you, would probably are, and that includes employment decision, finance, credit scoring, educational access, law enforcement tools, critical infrastructure. This means strict compliance requirements, and that's heavy stuff. For limited risks, it's all your chatbots, emotional recognition, deep fakes, if anyone is doing it still. Transparency is the key here. People must know that they have been dealing with AI and not with the real thing. And Grok, I hope you're listening. And minimal risk, and that's the rest of us, video games, spam filters, basic recommendation systems. Like if you're interacting with travel agency, that's the minimal risk. And you are in the clear, but it doesn't mean that you have to document that you are in the clear. Because if that's what happens, if you say we are low risk, we believe you are low risk, a regulator shows up and says, actually, you know what, you are high risk and you've been operating without proper compliance evidence, and that's a violation. So if in doubt, talk to legal experts, talk to anyone knowledgeable, double check answers, do not guess. And remember, most startups we've been talking to, working with, they actually belong to high risk. So that means they have some work to do. Next step, that's the most exciting one. No one likes paperwork, and still there's a lot of paperwork or digital paperwork to do, building evidence. You need to create a compliance binder for yourself, a compliance documentation dossier, a folder, think of it, a data room across your entire development lifecycle. And that means technical documentation, risk management, assessment frameworks, all the boring stuff that you've been delaying to deal with until now. Data governance, transparency and explainability, all the user disclosures, decision explanation mechanism, human oversight, super important, audit trails, very important. And I know that it feels very overwhelming, not just looking at the slide, but actually listening to it, and that's good because it's supposed to be overwhelming. And that's a main challenge for startups. Even if you don't see it right now, you will, because the creating and maintaining the evidence is a nightmare if you do it manually. You are already stretched thin. You are devoting all your resources to the product, and you are raising money, hiring, selling. The last thing you want to think is compliance documentation. And think about this. You have to document every product update, every model update, every product decision, every user policy, every data pipeline change. So that's why automated system that track compliance evidence as you develop are important, because you cannot retrofit documentation after the fact. That never works. And one of our users is saying that, okay, imagine we're building something really exciting, like maybe dual use, maybe for defense. And you run the compliance check assessment, and you realize that we are falling into high risk or even prohibited, and we have to rework everything we have built. That's super expensive, and that's very discouraging, and that is delaying your go-to-market by months. So each time you have to retrain your model, each time you change your data pipeline, documentation updates. Compliance, according to AI Act, is not one-time project. You actually have to build a compliance infrastructure. And that brings us to step 3, which looks equally exciting but equally important: maintaining compliance. So once you are all in the clear, all in the green, everything looks great, all the compliance scores are showing your perfect health. Remember, it's not one-time achievement. It's not a checkbox. Like you check it, I'm compliant, I'm good to go. Post-market monitoring, according to AI Act, is also very important because you have to collect incident reports, you have to identify the risks or bias patterns, and you may not catch it in testing. And every time you change something, documentation has to get updated. And also your evidence needs to be organized, updated on time, ideally in real time. How you cannot do it in real time manually, right? You have to dig through Notion, you have to dig through your Google Docs. And that's from time perspective, your ongoing compliance looks like quarterly risk assessments, annually conformity assessment renewals, or if you deploy something super important. Incident reporting, you have only 15 days to report them to notified bodies or to authorities, and documentation of every system update. And imagine, like right now, you are 10 people, maybe you can keep track. But what if you have 50 people, 100 people, multiple products, multiple markets? That's where automation is becoming very helpful. You need systems that collect evidence, track changes, ideally in real time. They notify you of any gaps in your compliance documentation, and they prepare audit and reports automatically, because otherwise compliance becomes your bottleneck. And it's not supposed to be. It's not built to stifle innovation. I know it sounds very banal, but that's true. But it's supposed to support innovation. It's supposed to support real, how to say, trustworthy innovation. It shouldn't be wild west as it is in other countries, because we don't know what's going to happen in the next 6 months. So yeah, let's recap. First of all, it's assess your systems. You're absolutely right. Your instincts tell you right, or maybe you read the act very well. Second is document everything, compile your evidence. And third, maintain your evidence fresh and ready for audit at any time. And that's our invitation. We are preparing for our beta launch in March. And React is something that is doing all the hard work for you. Think of it as your antivirus that basically updates your evidence and collects and organizes your evidence on autopilot. We are launching in March, as I said. It's just 5 months ahead of August enforcement. So you have the time to get everything ready, tested, audit proof. And now we are offering pilot program for startups who are, first of all, the priority is for those working in high-risk industries. And we want to really give you guys proper attention. So get in touch. Yes, we have companies already on board. We don't want to have 100 more. It would be great, but it's not feasible. We are a startup just like anyone else here, most of you. So my encouragement is let us consult you at least. If you join the pilot, you do it now. And if you've been sitting on this and thinking, okay, I'm going to do it later, still very early, I need to raise funds first. It's not the goal of AREACT is to level the playing field for everyone. We believe that compliance doesn't have to be expensive or and affordable only for big guys like Microsoft and Meta and whatnot at Google. They have their own funds resources. We want to make it affordable and easy to use for everyone in this room. So I know that you are probably a bit overwhelmed right now, so you may not want to deal with it, but actually that's the moment. So to make up your mind and start taking this boring thing a bit more seriously, a lot seriously.
Julia, thank you so much for walking us through the plan, and thank you so much for offering this exclusive offer for the webinar participants to join your pilot. Guys, we have just a couple of minutes left, so let's use this to maybe answer some questions. So let's see what we have in the question box. I'll just bring you over here. And I think one of the first question is, how much does it cost to get compliant?
Yeah, let me probably answer that.
Any ideas?
Depends on how much work you have done so far. To join the pilot, it's free. And to let us assess your risk category and create this whole compliance workflow, it's free right now. It's going to be free for maybe a few more weeks, couple of weeks at least. And then later on we launch in March, so it's going to cost again not as much as huge American GRC platforms. So it's again, we are aiming at the mid market. We are aiming at startups. So it's not super expensive, not expensive at all. Time wise, how much time you must be prepared to dedicate to set things up, to upload your compliance or to connect your systems. That's going to be probably going to take a week. And from there on, you would be spending, depends on the gaps in compliance that we identify. So you're going to be spending from a couple of hours to probably a day in the beginning just to make things right. And then once you deploy something or once you probably nearing your development stage is changing, there will be new compliance requirements and you will have to we will let you know what exactly evidence you have to provide. But again, it's not time consuming at all once you set it up right from the beginning.
Thank you so much, Julia. And I already see some other follow-up questions on the reassessment of the requirements and on the continuous compliance. Guys, thank you so much for the questions. We received a lot. We are unfortunately running out of time. So after the webinar, we'll make sure to regroup with the speakers. And I see that some questions we might ask to you, Anna, also for your input and some questions for Julia as well. So we'll make sure to follow up with the slides. I saw that someone requested that with the recording of with the webinar, with the action plan, of course, with the offer from IRAX. Thank you, Julia, for extending this pilot seats to our audience. So hopefully after today, you will be well equipped to get UAI Act ready. And maybe it's just as a final takeaway, what we would like you to remember after this webinar, please do keep in mind that even if the big dogs like Apple, Google, and Microsoft are affected like this, it's also very important for startups to get compliant as well. And it's not just about the checkbox in your legal portfolio, but it's also about access to funding. It's about access to the market. It's about building partnerships. But what is more important, and Anna, thank you so much for pointing it out for us, it's a lot about being responsible to your end users, being responsible to your customers, and helping our society have trust in technology and in each of us. So thank you all. Thank you so much to you, Anna and Julia. Thank you for everyone. I think almost everyone was with us from very beginning till the very end. We are very much looking to having more AI compliant products, and let's all get EU AI Act ready.